Well, welcome. I'm Stephanie Fatman. I'm the Registrar of Probate. I oversee the Probate and Family Court for Worcester County, so all 60 cities and towns in Worcester County. We handle matters such as divorce, child support, child custody, probating an estate when loved ones pass away. I'm in a unique position in the court system. It's an elected position, and so myself and Katie have teamed up. We spend a lot of time. Katie's also elected in Registry of Deeds, and we go out in the community and try to let you know a little bit about the court system and what to expect before you ever come in. And so today we'll give you some tips and tricks on ways to avoid the probate and family court, because it's really not a place that you want to visit if you can avoid it. And you will have your folders right in front of you. That'll also have some more information about myself and our court, but we're also here with Katie from the Registry of Deeds.
So I'm Katie. You can't avoid me, so if you own a house, you have to see me at some point, or somebody in your family does. But we just want to, this was born out of, Stephanie was down in Milford and said, hey, I get a lot of questions because our offices kind of have a lot of crossover. So it's just kind of evolved. So that being said, we really like when people interact and ask questions. Otherwise, being politicians and lawyers, we can talk all day long. So anyway, I'm the Registrar of Deeds. I represent 55 cities and towns. I hold the deed and the land records for every piece of land of those communities, including the building we're sitting in, the home you live in, whether you own it, rent it, whatever, where your kids live if they're in the district, and all that other stuff. So we maintain all those records dating back to 1731. So when things happen. So a lot of times we get a lot of foot traffic that, so we're not in the same building. I'm in downtown Worcester. Those of you that are from Worcester County, my office is where the old Galleria Mall was located. And Stephanie's office is down about 3 blocks down the street. She's in the courthouse. But we get a lot of foot traffic back and forth, which is another reason why this presentation kind of came up, because we get a lot of people asking questions. I'm writing a will, or my kids want me to add them to their deed, and does that get me out of probate? And they're kind of back and forth, not knowing how to handle all of those things. So we want you guys to meet us so you know that we are A, approachable, and B, our offices are approachable, and that you can ask questions. In our folders are a lot of references with email addresses, phone numbers, and various other things, as well as some glossary terms of what both of our offices have to offer, which we'll kind of highlight today. One of the more important things, which is in Stephanie Fatman's folder, which I want to highlight, is if any of you are here or watching on TV in anticipation of doing some estate planning, and you're here because you want to kind of start to get your head wrapped around that, or ask questions about something you already have done, she has in there the phone number for the Worcester County Bar Association. What is the Worcester County Bar Association? It is a group of lawyers. It is a nonprofit group that we are both members of, that lawyers can join. And it's, in essence, a brother and sisterhood of lawyers that are constantly growing and learning their practices, but they also have what's called a lawyer's referral service. So you can call them and you speak to the women. I think it's a man and 2 women that work there. And they will ferret out what you need, and there are a list of lawyers who are members there that you can say, this is what I'm looking for, and they'll direct you and refer you to a lawyer who's a member who is in good standing, and there's some accountability there. So that's why we're big. Stephanie was kind enough to put it in her folder, but we're big proponents of the Worcester County Bar Association, because they're lawyers that kind of work with all the lawyers on a regular basis within Worcester County.
And we're big proponents of hiring an attorney to plan your estate. Well, we're both attorneys. We unfortunately can't plan your whole estate for you in the next hour. We just want to get you starting to think and ask some questions and really start thinking ahead, or navigating some of the life circumstances you've already been facing. So we want to encourage you to hire a lawyer as you go through the estate planning process. But again, that resource is in there to help you get started. We also suggest talking to some of your friends. Somebody in here might already have a will or some other documents in place, and so if that's the case, you can always talk to your friends, see who they've worked with for an attorney, see if they liked them. And you want to make sure you're working with an attorney you really like, somebody that you get along with. You're going to give them a lot of important information, and you're going to spend a lot of time and money making this estate plan, so you want to make sure you're working with somebody that you feel comfortable with, that you want to share the information with.
The other thing I want to highlight is constantly reviewing it. It's not a one and done. Life, as we hit certain ages in our life and milestones, we realize that we're forever evolving, whether we hit the lottery and we won the Powerball and we have gazillion dollars, so rock on, or did our spouse pass away? Did our child pass away? Did my mom pass away and I have no siblings? Like, what is the ramifications? I am a humongous proponent of the 3 to 5 rule or life happened rule. So every 3 to 5 years, you should take out that estate plan that you paid a good amount of money on and read it and say, what has happened in my life? Did I move? Did I sell my house? Am I contemplating assisted living? Am I contemplating an accessory dwelling unit in my kid's house now that they've passed that law that you can build minor, tiny houses on people's land? What is going on in my world? Should I be changing these things? Has that child pissed me off enough that they're going to be removed from my will? That was me this week. My mother's very angry at me. I text with my brothers. We have a group text message, and there was a mom chat yesterday, and they said, "Oh, Katie, have you talked to Mom?" And I said, "No, I'm on the list." And I said, and they're like, "What'd you do now?" I said, "I was just myself." Oh. So my mom is ignoring me and talking to my 2 older brothers, and eventually, we'll come around and she will call me again. But right now, I am on the list. So for all I know, she's called her lawyer, and I am out of the will. I don't know, but could be that's the case today. I don't know. So those are the kind of life things we talk about. So we get a lot of questions at the Registry of Deeds saying we want to avoid the probate and family court, and our biggest thing is our house. How do we do that? So a lot of times people will come in with their children and say, I want to add my kid to the deed, and that's usually a common question. So I'm kind of just guessing that might be one of the questions that people would commonly ask here. So those are things. We don't draft deeds at the Worcester Registry of Deeds. We only record them. So we are going to, again, refer you somewhere out there. We have provided in the folders and I'll leave some here for the people out in TV land if they want to pick them up out here in Berlin. I have put together some glossary terms of how people own property, as far as, if you own a joint tenants with your kid, what happens if you own it in a certain way. But we always push you to hire an attorney because there's legal ramifications to everything. I tend to call it the quick and dirty, and I'm not a fan of it personally, is that people will say, I'm sick, or I'm getting elderly, or I'm avoiding paying for the nursing home, so I'm going to add my daughter to the deed because she's been helping me and taking care of me. And the reason I call it quick and dirty is, yes, it's quick, but it can be dirty. My question is does your daughter have children? Will they be applying to college? Will there be financial aid things? Because now your daughter's on the deed and it's an asset. I also worry about people not realizing that, your daughter's taking care of you, but did your daughter tell you that she doesn't pay her Discover or her Amex bill, and they're coming for her and they're going to put a lien on your property? So those are things that you don't necessarily want to talk about, but they happen. And let me tell you, at the Registry of Deeds, we have a lot of credit card executions on title. Those are the things that you don't realize, and those are the things that people don't talk about. We're in an era of social media, and everybody puts the good stuff up, but where's the bad stuff, and who's not paying their bills? And let me tell you, we have a lot of IRS tax liens, we have a lot of credit card liens, we have everything out there. So that's why I am not a fan of the quick and dirty. And to reiterate what Stephanie mentioned, talk to people. I can't emphasize enough from years of practicing. So I'm a little older than Stephanie, if you couldn't tell. So Stephanie became a lawyer while she was the Registrar of Probate. So she hasn't stepped into the dark side of what I used to do, which was private practice attorney. So for years, I had people that came in, and you start to talk to them, and they think that they have an idea of what they want. And I'm like, could you please just talk to your family so that you're keeping people on the same page? Because we both have jobs where the problems come to us. If it goes swimmingly, it doesn't go on our radar. But if it's a problem, we handle the fights. I mean, that's why people come to government offices, right? Because there's an issue. I'm sure Stephanie has 10,000 stories she could share of people that come in and say, I think there's multiple copies of the will, but this is the one I could find. Or, you know, I took care of mom and this isn't right because she said she was going to change the will, right?
Yeah, sure. You think no one's going to fight until money is involved, and then they end up with us in the probate court, and there's always fighting. And so, as Katie said, your house is usually your biggest asset, but all your other assets, what do we do with those, and how do we avoid the probate court? And really the biggest thing is if the asset passes to another individual directly, you avoid probate court. So if you have a bank account and someone else's name is on the bank account, it's going to directly pass to that beneficiary. You don't need to come to the probate court. So life insurance policies, 401ks, those type of assets pass directly to somebody, avoid the probate court. It's all the other assets that don't directly pass. That's when you come to the probate court to probate an estate. The court will give you what's called letters, and the letter is the document, the legal document you'll take to an institution like a bank and say, I need to have access to this person's bank account. And so we want to encourage you to start thinking ahead of what assets do you have that you can pass off to somebody, leave a beneficiary, while maybe not your house, adding another person to the deed, some bank accounts, or like I said, life insurance policies, those type of things you'll add another person to, and make sure it passes smoothly so you can avoid the probate process. With that, we talked already about your will. That's kind of your roadmap. We want to really encourage you to start thinking about that roadmap and then updating that roadmap. That's going to really lay out how you want your assets to pass. You've worked your whole life for them, and so you can be in control. And it really does help things on the back end when you've thought through the different layers that Katie had mentioned of your family, of how you want assets to go. Do you want it to go to a grandchild or to your son? What about their spouse? Once they're married, it's a marital asset. So really thinking through the layers and the complexities of your own family. Each family is unique, so each plan is going to be unique. Figuring out what you want to happen, and the more you can detail and lay out, the fewer problems and fights there'll be in the probate and family court on the back end.
I'd like to mention something your will is important. I'd like you to talk about the safety deposit box.
Yeah. So after you have your documents drafted and prepared, talking to your family, letting them know where they can find those documents. We often see people come into the probate court and they are trying to get access to a will that's in a safe deposit box. That's not helpful. You have to probate the estate just to get access to that will that's already in the safe deposit box. So you're doing the process backwards. You want to make sure you have your documents in a place that your loved ones can access and find. We suggest just buying a safe, a fireproof safe at Walmart, putting it in your closet, letting your family know where they can get it, and putting all your important documents in that. It's really helpful that you've had these conversations with your family members. Again, it can avoid fights and problems, but we often see a lot of fights, like Katie said, over the will. If you've updated that will like you're supposed to every couple of years, but a daughter has the older copy, the son has the newer copy, which was the original copy? Those are all things that will come out in court that cost more time and money, create complexities, and really the attorneys are the ones that are going to benefit in the end because they're the ones that are going to be charging for the process, and you want to try to avoid that and paying out the money on the back end.
I will say too, I think it's safer in general, and more attorneys are leaning this way. There was a court case in 1995 that came down in our Supreme Judicial Court in Massachusetts, not DC, but Massachusetts. And lawyers are now less inclined to hold wills. They want you to take them, and a lot of times clients are like, "Oh, do I really want to hold this original document?" So that's again the conversation you want to have. So with all due respect, my mother has chosen a lawyer, a family friend, and she did her will with this lawyer, and I was probably why I'm on that list I talked about. We were recently talking about her will. She instigated it, not me. And I have a photocopy of it, and I know that the lawyer has the original. More often than not, lawyers aren't holding them anymore because of this case. And the case is if the lawyer's office burns to the ground, which is what happened in this case in 1995, and that lawyer had a filing room the size of this room that was full of everybody's estate documents, and they all burnt to the ground because they were originals and they weren't in fire safe provisioning. That lawyer was required to recreate every one of those documents and not charge the people. And that lawyer learned a really tough lesson. So lawyers aren't holding them anymore. There used to be a method, and I can imagine maybe somebody in the audience has this question, where you could file your will at the probate court before you die. Personally, back to the lawyer thing, I'm not a fan of that, because if you go and change it, then you've got to go and re-record it with the Registry of
Yeah,
Probate, and it gets
I
to
know
be
what
a
you
thing. It is, to me, the island of last resort if you have to record it somewhere because you feel threatened, like domestic violence, or you have a problem at home, or you have some other situations. It is a receptacle you can use. I just find that it makes it more difficult for everybody, especially if you do a second will after and you have it at home, and then all of a sudden you're like, you die and your family doesn't realize that you had previously recorded one at the Registry of Probate. So now you've got a problem of, were you able, which will dictates. So those are things. It is there. I always like to highlight that it is an offer that the state can do for you. I've had one client who I've discussed this with, because they were concerned about domestic violence, and they said, I have a situation where I have money and I have a problem with my parent, and my parent is very awful to me and to my sibling, and even though I'm an adult, I don't know what's going to happen to me if my parent gets a hold of any idea that they're not getting anything. And they wanted to talk about the options of recording it at the Registry of Probate. So that is somewhere I always like to kind of just like make sure people know that. But does anybody have any questions yet? Do we have too much information yet? We can keep going. To kind of shift gears, in my folder, I just want to highlight two very important things that should be in there, which is the homestead law. Are you all set? The homestead law. The homestead law came out and was changed by Governor Healy in August of 2024, where we have increased values of homestead protection. That follows in line with the fact that our houses are now worth more than they were prior to the new housing increase and the bump of values. So if you have achieved the magic age of 62, you can get more coverage. You would have to record a new homestead. It's $35. If you have a homestead, it's still valid. It's just at a lesser amount of coverage. If you record a homestead, it's $500,000. I think the legislative theory is after you're 62, you shouldn't have any more mortgages, or you may not have mortgages. You probably have more equity in your home. So, and if you're married to somebody and you're over 62, it's $1 million worth of coverage. And I know that if you're a town member of Berlin, you're an affluent community, a good chunk of it. So you're going to have some houses that are in that $1 million plus range. The other thing that we have in our folder, which is the picture with the giant stoplight, because we want to catch everybody's attention on that, is our free consumer notification service. I know Stephanie can attest to this. There's a lot of fraudulent shenanigans going on there, and I'm sure that they've been touched on the probate court too. People pretend to be other people and sign things inappropriately and all that other stuff, because it all boils down to money. We have a free service through the Commonwealth of Mass. My boss is Bill Galvin, and he helped us provide this service statewide, where you can, for free with an email account, sign up to 3 properties at a time. And what happens is anything gets recorded, we send you an email saying something has been recorded in your name or your property, however you fill in the information, whether it's the address, the book and page reference, or just by your name. And we'll send you an email saying something, there's been a ding, and you want to go and look at it and make sure it pertains to you, or if it's an accurate one. Has anybody been seeing on TV stuff about deed fraud out there and things like that? It happens. We had it happen Friday. It's been a nightmare. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I see the head shake in the back. It's crazy, but it's the new stealing. So they're not stealing your property, they're stealing your money, or they're stealing somebody's money, in essence. So it's something to be hyper vigilant about. Some people pay for LifeLock. That covers your personal identity, as well as it tracks your land documents. For the perspective of your land documents, they do what we do on CNS for free. But if you want that extra layer for your personal stuff, if you're doing online banking, everything, we live off our telephones, those types of things. I can't emphasize enough about that. So Stephanie mentioned, kind of communication is so important. I like to tell this story. I had a near and dear friend of mine, and it was coming up on her 90th birthday, and she I called her my Grammy. She was not my Grammy, but I called her my Grammy. And we threw a big birthday party for her out at Sturbridge Village, where she worked for most of her 20 years prior to her birthday. And she said, my great grandkids are coming, and they live part of the year in Harvard, Mass, and part of the year in Alaska. And I really want to give my oldest great granddaughter my diamond earrings. And she goes, can you write me a will? And I want to prepare. So this was the conversation that went on. And I looked at her and I said, well, they're coming to your birthday party, and I've never seen you wear these GD earrings. Where are they? What's going on with them? So she goes, oh, I wouldn't wear them. I'm saving them for her. So my comment to her was, well, why aren't you giving them to her now? Like, what are you waiting for? Because when you have 18 great-grandchildren, don't you worry about them fighting over no, Grammy promised them to me. You shouldn't get them. So she took my advice and she presented them to her oldest great-grandchild at the party, and the child was thrilled and wore them for the next 2 years until, sadly, my friend passed away. And she, at the end, she's like, I'm glad I did that. So gifts in life is something that Stephanie can address, but I can't emphasize enough what a great idea it is.
And it is. And we suggest that often. One of the biggest fights we see in the probate and family court is jewelry. And like you said, you just don't think until the grandkids are digging through it, and somebody wants this and somebody wants that, and where did it go? That's another huge piece of it, knowing kind of how your assets are lined up and how they're going to be distributed, because sometimes somebody passes and a son goes into the house, cleans it out before daughter gets in, and she can't find what she was looking for. So gifting things in life, if you're done with them or you want them to go to a specific person, do it now, and it's not part of your estate, and it can't be fought about later, and then people get to enjoy it, and you get to enjoy them enjoying it. So we really do encourage that as well.
I can't emphasize enough of planning. Stephanie likes my comment. If you pay for an estate plan now, it's certainly going to be cheaper than when your family fights over it after. So if you're the type of person that wants to line it up for your family and not have any issues, or you think you're saving them time and money, please do that. It's really the way to kind of get it focused and do that, because if you don't leave an estate plan, or you leave one that's really vague, and more often than not, we'll both hear people say, oh, I trust my kids, they get along. Yeah, okay. That's why we have lawyers. So many lawyers. The other thing is, I'm married, Stephanie's married. We may both be able to attest to it, I don't know, but I have 3 sister-in-laws. My husband has a sister, and both my brothers have wives. None of us are the same. Mm-hmm. We have very different perspectives on how things go. We have so I'm a daughter-in-law, so I, believe it or not, contrary to how you see me today presenting myself, I keep my mouth shut in the family business on my husband's side, believe it or not, to the point where they're like, my husband's finally like, could you just answer a damn question? But it's not, it's his parents, and he has a sister, and she has a husband, and they have 3 kids, and, those are factors we have to go into. And then on the flip side, on my side, I have my mom. My dad passed away 22 years ago. So it's my mom, and she never remarried or anything. And I have 2 brothers, and it's very interesting, because certain times, my brothers who I've known over 50 years of my life, I hear something and I look at them and I'm like, what did your wife tell you? Because I can hear the voice in my head of who's actually speaking, because it's not my brother, it's their spouse. So those are things that you kind of need to prepare for. So I think that talking with your children, your siblings, whoever it is that you talk to about these things, and have somebody to bend their ear about it is really important, and to kind of tee it all up to make sure you're happy with it. Or you could bury your head in the sand and let it all just fall apart after you're gone.
And we talked about it before, the complexities of families, and mm-hmm. just thinking through those layers in the marriages and the spouses, because they do get involved. And
you have blended families. You always talk about,
we always talk about blended families. It's another piece that people don't always think about. But do you want your now husband's kids from a previous marriage to be included, not included? You can always leave somebody out of the will. Putting that in writing is the best way to do it, by saying that they shouldn't receive anything in the will. But thinking through the different layers, if you predecease your husband and he has kids from a previous marriage, what are they entitled to? So really thinking through.
And adopted children. Sometimes I think you had a story once about an adopted child that came out of the woodwork because everybody was going to ignore the adopted child because the siblings didn't like them as an adult. And then you're like, oh my God, and this kid, does he have rights?
So
Those are
that's
things.
the importance of making sure that things are in writing and things are detailed and things are clear. Because once you've passed away, you can't speak on it anymore. And so it's up to the court and the judges to make a decision. And what Katie's mentioning is we had a very big estate, lots of money, millions of dollars, and everything in the will said it was to be left to the decedent's sons. Later in life, many, many years later in life, when he was in his 70s, he adopted a young child, made a codicil, an addendum amendment to the will, leaving that child a house. Only the house in that addendum. And then, when he passed away, the two older brothers said, no, Dad said in the will everything to his sons. This doesn't count as a son because all he got was the one house. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars to be distributed. And so they have spent 3 years in court and hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to clarify if this young son counts as one of the father's sons per the will. Or if all he gets is one house. And so it was just unclear. I don't think it was his intention to leave his child out, but he did because he wasn't clear. He hadn't updated the document properly. So that's where you're always thinking, revisiting, and deciding where you want things to go and making sure it's clear so that people aren't fighting about it and the court doesn't have to ultimately make the decision on what the family
And you
is gonna
can't
get.
recoup that money that you spend on the lawyer. There's nobody going to pay you back on that.
No one's paying back.
So that's the other rub that's interesting is when you're not prepared, or if it's, say you do an estate plan and you don't set it up properly and then it falls apart, then you have to go through your heirs or your kids or whoever's left behind has to go through paying a lawyer to basically go through all of that paperwork and figure it out. So it's definitely something that that's why we're here. It's important.